Fish on First has partnered with About the Fans to launch a merchandise collection. Rep the FOF logo in more Marlins-inspired apparel. Find it all at aboutthefans.com. Enter coupon code FOF10 at checkout to get 10% off your order. FOF10 for a 10% discount.
This is Griffin Conan.
This is Xavier Edwards.
This is Liam Hicks.
This is Dave Myers, and you're watching Fish on First live.
New episode of Fish on First live, presented by our merch buddies at About the Fans. You know the drill. Aboutthefans.com. You can check out the FOF collection over there. Save 10% with coupon code FOF10, or you can pay full price if you want to. That's fine with us too. I'm Eli Sussman. Got Isaac Azout, Nate Karsmer as well. And heading into this Marlins Twins series, we have I guess you could call it our sister site from Twins Daily with Seth Stowes, fresh off of vacation. And he got a break from the slumping Twins, but now he's back in action and joining us on short notice. Thanks a lot, Seth. Excited to talk about things with you.
Happy to join you. I love the site. I love that intro, by the way. That's seriously the coolest intro to a podcast I've seen in a long time. That is fantastic. And yeah, the Twins are not doing well, but nothing like playing against the perfect Marlins of late to try to turn things around.
Right. And we're at the time of year where that intro usually requires a few updates. We need to swap out players based on who's traded, who's not. But now, Isaac, this is a team that does not want to get broken up. They want to stick together because they're winning all their games. They're supposed to be sellers. We've been assuming all year long they're going to be trade deadline sellers. And now we get to a month out from the deadline itself, and they've won 7 in a row, all 6 in a row on the road, an unprecedentedly successful road trip. Yeah, where do you want to start with how well they've been playing over this past week?
There's been a lot of special moments since the new ownership regime in 2017. But so I don't want to disrespect those years, the 2020 playoffs, the 2023 playoffs, but this has got to be one of the most surreal streaks, particularly that it's all on the road, in Arizona and San Francisco, on the West Coast, where the Marlins don't usually or historically play that well. And with a starting pitching staff that has done okay, they've, for the most part, carried their own weight. But to see this offense do what it's done, particularly in their last series in Arizona, you guys are seeing those final scores up there on the graphic. No matter what, this team is always in it. It resembles somewhat, I can't believe I'm saying this, the 2017 Marlins, when you had that big 3 outfield and you had an all-star catcher, an all-star second baseman on your roster as well, and Justin Bohr. This is just a team that was never out of it. The game that stuck out the most is the Sandy Alcantara start, coming off 4 great starts, and an okay one where you're allowed 6 earned runs, and Miami still down by 4 or 5 runs. Was not out of it. Otto Lopez 3-run home run, and then a couple more runs in the 9th and 10th inning. Miami comes out with a win. So I just think this is one of the more, like I said, surreal Marlins stretches, because combined with the unexpectedness, combined with the opponents, and combined with the mid-starting pitching, and you have 7 straight wins. It's just incredible to watch.
Nate, I think we need to focus a little bit more on Otto specifically, because he has been playing well since coming back from the IL, becoming the shortstop again. But this past week, especially doing it, taking his offense to a whole nother level for so long this season. He's kind of been underperforming his expected metrics, and now all of a sudden the slugging has shown up. He, of course, had the big hit in not yesterday, but back on Sunday to totally flip that game in the 8th inning. Like all of a sudden, like the fantasy of the Marlins turning a waiver claim into their franchise shortstop, it doesn't actually seem that outlandish anymore. For his season overall, it's looking really good. And then especially for this last week, to see him kind of raise his ceiling to a higher spot than I think even the most optimistic people imagined.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, isn't it? Otto Lopez really has he has ice in his veins. There's not much more to say. The Diamondbacks pitching staff really gave him a gift by loading the bases for him. They couldn't find the strike zone on Sunday, and Otto Lopez made him pay with 2 outs in the 8th inning, and which really started the rally for the Marlins. Kyle Stowers obviously came up with a 3-run double to really put the nail in the coffin on Sunday's game. But he's been awesome, man. And just in Saturday's game as well, you talked about him getting unlucky. The at-bat before that 2-run homer that Isaac mentioned, it was a stun, completely obliterated to center. But, of course, they're playing at Chase Field. It was a can of corn for Alec Thomas. Next at-bat, gets a pitch he likes, strides it out to the opposite field to get the homer back. He's been so well. I think really where you see the biggest change is obviously when he shifted over to shortstop. Started off the season obviously hot and then cooled down a lot of April. And then May comes around, not really doing too well either. And I think that just comfortability of playing shortstop, where he, again, has been awesome defensively, really just continuing what he did at second base. And he's so comfortable over there, obviously defensively and with the bat. He's been awesome, really working the opposite field well, which we've seen obviously with that homer. And yeah, the possibility of a former waiver claim for Peter Bendich to turn into a potential franchise shortstop is unbelievable. There's not much more you can say about what Peter's done with this guy and what Otto's done on the field as well. He's a leader, and he's only he's still 27 years old. Am I right on that? Is he that young still?
Even younger. I have to double check. Is it 25?
That is unbelievable.
No,
but
26.
26. Okay, right in the middle. But yeah, it really is a great thing to see. He's such a great guy to be around that clubhouse too. He's a natural leader, and if he can keep this going, then I don't think it's really out of the question for an extension. Hopefully, it's been a long time, but I think you have a perfect candidate right here with Otto.
Yeah, this GIF kind of has a couple of dimensions to it, where Otto is celebrating with Stowers, and then you see Connor Norby in the background, kind of looking very stoic. It's like Otto is kind of the new toy that people are playing with, where Norby was such a big highlight of the second half of last season, and he's still around. We may be getting to that later in the pod. Even he had some good moments. Everybody's been raking to some extent over this past week to turn things around. But yeah, kind of an unconventional show format this time, because we wanted to get Seth in and out in a timely manner here. Wanted to skip ahead to looking at the Twins in particular. These teams, very surprisingly, meeting up with similar records. 2 games separating the Twins and the Marlins over halfway through the season. I don't think people saw that coming. And Seth, I think this graphic kind of sums things up in terms of how streaky the Twins have been. They sputtered out of the gate. They had a winning streak even more impressive than the Marlins in the first half of May. And then over this extended stretch since then, it's gone back to not just losing a lot, but the margin of victory in some of these losses lately have been massive, and I imagine unsettling considering the expectations that the Twins had. Yeah, it's just how do you try to sum up what the Twins season has been to this point, just relative to expectations? I imagine it's overall been somewhat disappointing.
Yeah, it's been weird because last year they were so good from about mid-April until mid-August. I mean, they were one of the top 5 teams in baseball for that long of a stretch. And then they just collapsed at the end, ended up in 4th place. And a lot of the young guys, the talented, exciting prospects, players, just struggled just crazy down the stretch. Royce Lewis, Brooks Lee, Matt Wallner was okay. Trevor Larnach. I mean, there are prospects who are top 100 guys who just really struggled. So honestly, I don't think Twins fans knew what we were going to get. April was slow. May was unbelievable. And of course, by the end of May, they were, 5-6 games over 500. And you're like, okay, here we go. We're behind the Tigers, but we're as good as anyone else. Wild card's probable, that kind of stuff. And then June was just terrible. I mean, your favorite players, I'm sure, Jonah Bride at one point pitched, I think, 4 games out of like 10 games or something like that. I mean, a 15-16 ERA, but man, that knuckleball was, I guess it was something. It was pretty hittable. He just got DFA'd, but yeah, I mean, you gotta, it's so cliche, but you hope you turn the month to July and things get back to positive. On the one positive, Royce Lewis is back. On the other side of that, he hasn't been real good this year, and he's been hurt again. And it's hard to know. And obviously losing Pablo Lopez and Zebby Matthews for an extended period of time is not good, but there's good, there's bad, it's just been a roller coaster.
You did bring up Pablo. I want to talk about him a little bit more. He was extremely well liked in Miami, and yet he got to an even higher level those last couple seasons with Minnesota, especially in 2023. He was the hero of snapping that playoff win drought that the Twins had, and then this season flashing some good stuff as well before finding out kind of why the Marlins were open to trading him in the first place, because of a history of shoulder and lat related injuries right there. But they're still expecting him back this year, you think?
Yeah, I mean, everywhere you look, they're still hopeful, that it could be a earlier mid-August type of a timeline, but I don't know if that's optimistic. We really haven't had an update in a while. So, I don't know what to expect on that front. Matthews is kind of the same thing. Both of them got hurt after pitching in Sacramento. So, of course, that became a storyline. But I'll tell you what, Pablo Lopez in his couple of years with the Twins, everyone loved Luis Ariz. I mean, I think you guys probably had a lot of people that were big Luis Ariz fans. I mean, he's one of the nicest people I've met, just great person, and obviously can hit a lot of singles and stuff like that. But Pablo has come in and just been a leader. He's been he's so smart and he's well spoken. He can lead by example, but he isn't afraid to say things. I mean, honestly, that's part of why I'm struggling with why the Twins have struggled, because they've got Pablo Lopez on the pitching staff, and he's a tremendous leader. The other guys, Joe Ryan, Bailey Ober, they all follow him and what he's doing, even though he's not much older than them. And then you've got Byron Buxton kind of in the outfield. He's a great leader. He's not as, boisterous, but he's very much a leader. Carlos Correa is really impressive on a leadership standpoint. And then, I mean, I think Ryan Jeffers behind the plate. They've got people who are not only good players, but good leader type of people. And that's why you just wonder why they're so streaky.
When you try to wrap your mind around it, in terms of the Twins kind of seem like they're in this limbo between what direction they're actually going to head and come deadline season. At this moment, do you think it is more likely that they rally and get themselves back into a buying position, or they have a stacked bullpen, and relief pitching is always something that is highly desirable at the deadline? Is there that temptation that if things are looking doubtful, that they're a team that could just make a killing by flipping some of these? The relievers are seem to be that one unit on the team that's been so consistently great. How are you kind of torn between the possibility of what direction they could go when it comes to that?
Well, like I said, even with last year where they were so good for that extended period of time, it was the bullpen. And starters were good too, but the bullpen the starter just went 5. And then 3 or 4 guys threw the next 4 innings and gave up no runs and 1 hit and struck out 7, or something like that. This year hasn't been quite as good, but when you've got arms like Joan Duran at the closer spot, he's got 2 years left of service time before he can become a free agent. Griffin Jacks, I think, has another year or 2 left. He was as good as anyone in baseball last year. He had some real struggles early. He's been better. I mean, Louis Varland, they're not going to trade Louis Varland, but he's become just the most reliable. Cole Sands. But then you get to the Justin Topas and some of the guys down the line. There have been questions. They had to trade Jorge Alcala, who was a tremendous talent, but was really struggling. He went to Boston, otherwise they would have DFA'd him. So, I mean, I agree. They're like 2 games out of the wild card, right? I mean, you don't want to just give in at that point, but also you see them play the good teams and you see these long extended stretches of bad, and you just wonder, how do they compete? I mean, we saw what they did against Tarek Skubal on Sunday night, which, by the way, I'm a baseball fan. I love watching Tarek Skubal pitch. Even if it's against the Twins, you just can't help but appreciate how good he was. And I'd love to see a comparison between him at his peak and Johan Santana during his peak. I mean, it's so dominant that it's fun to watch. But those are the types of pitchers that those playoff teams have, and this team can't hit right now. And they can't, other than Buxton. And you can't win if you don't hit. You can't win if you don't pitch. And frankly, they're not that good defensively, other than Buxton and Harrison Bader. So it's kind of hard to find the positives, and yet, again, they're only 2 out.
Someone that I feel like Twins fans would have expected to be a positive was Bailey Ober, who has just been uncharacteristically roughed up a few times. I think the Twins have lost his last 5 starts. Just what have you seen differently from him, who seemed to be poised for just another at least solid season, but it's just gone the other way?
I mean, he's been their most consistent starter over the last 2 or 3 years, and that's with Pablo Lopez in there. I'm not saying he's been as dominant, but he's been so consistent and so consistently just good. Not great, but just really good. Joe Ryan's certainly been better this year, but from what I've seen, and that's, again, I was gone for the last 10 days, Bailey Ober's just getting hit. He's I don't know if he's tipping pitches or what. There must be something on him right now, because his best pitch is his changeup, and he gets a lot of swings and misses and weak contact with it. And right now it's being hit hard. And so is the fastball. and it doesn't seem to matter what he throws in there. And I'm sure he's as frustrated as anyone, because I know how hard he works, how much he dives into the analytics, the fundamentals, the video, everything. I know he had the off-field issue with a quote-unquote fan reaching out to his wife, and the death threats and things like that. Honestly, from a human level, that has to affect you. And hopefully that's bigger than baseball. But on the mound, he looks the same. The velocity is down a couple miles per hour, so you never know. But he's been injured enough in the past, especially in college, where he was an All-American as a freshman. Then it took him 3 years to kind of get back. And even the Twins were very much slow playing him early. But when he pitched, he was dominant. He would know if he was hurt, and I think he's smart enough to say something. So, I think he's healthy, and if he's healthy, hopefully there's an adjustment to be made, because he has been that good the last few years.
Let's take an early peek at these lineups for this first game of the series. Seth mentioned that Royce Lewis back from yet another IL stint. It has been so many of those. We'll get into that in a moment. I want to start on the Marlins side, though, with Nate. That initial reaction, I think this is one of the more popular Marlins lineups they've put out to this point in the season. It's as people have noticed, it's different almost every single game, but we got Liam Hicks at first base right there. Otherwise, a lot of the same suspects that were starting consistently throughout the road trip. X had the day off on Sunday, I think, and he's back in there as usual. So it's for a team that's been playing so well offensively, it's got to be pretty optimistic that they'll keep it going, even though it's no longer road warriors. Got to go back home to Lone Depot.
Yeah, I previously touched on this, but just to see, it's obviously different because Clayton or whoever's making the lineup for some reason wants to keep it different every single day for the most part. But they're using the similar archetype that we again see at Jeezy and Otto at the top. You got Augustine and Kyle in the middle, and then Norby and Myers towards the bottom. And I believe Carver touched on this before the Tampa stream. I want to say that. How do you expect a player to fit into a role and get comfortable with it if you move them around every single time? And I think now that they've used this lineup for the past week and a half or so, that wow, they're actually. I think they've had multiple hits. They've had double-digit hits in every game on the 7-game win streak, and it's like. It's obvious at this point. I don't know what took them so long to see that if you run out a consistent lineup every day, people are going to get comfortable in that spot and they're going to fit their role. So it's good to see that they finally accepted it. I know that the results have definitely pushed them to kind of accept it after wandering for the past, however many months it took them to do it. But it's good to see a lot of these guys are hot in their respective spots, especially Kyle Stowers right there in the middle, who's had an awesome little week's resurgence after a month where he wasn't looking like himself, plenty of extra base hits, and even against the lefty too, which they touched on the broadcast. He came out so hot against lefties to start the year, hit a little bit of a cold stretch, but I believe that I forgot who it was that he got the hit off of, but first pitch attacked off the pitch he liked. I believe that can get him back on track, just hitting lefties really well, and that's definitely going to help this lineup a lot.
The defensively, you don't see Derek Hill in that lineup. Obviously, he was reinstated today, and just I think to make this lineup perfect, you saw pregame Kevin Burrell tweeting that Roberto Hernandez was taking grounders at first base. If that were to happen in a real major league game, you have Hicks catch, Ramirez DH, Berto at first base. I think that is your best lineup on both sides of the ball. Hopefully we see that soon because we know of the limitations Ramirez has defensively. He'll be catching Edward Cabrera tonight. It's going to be, I think they're very close to having really actually defensible lineup here.
For this question about how Hicks is doing at first base, it's been a really small sample. I thought we were going to get a bigger sample once they made it clear that he was taking reps there and willing to get into games. This is only his third or fourth start at most at first base to this point. And it's been rough because what sticks out most is just how small he is. A 5'9" first baseman. That's not a particularly athletic one either, even though he had some experience at that position prior to that. It's that first base defense has been a very specific weakness for this team, no matter who's hitting well and who's playing that spot across the board. At the same time, Eric Wagman, of course, has been getting most of the reps, and he himself, despite being the size of a typical first baseman, has been a little stiff, klutzy there, all things considered, in a way that we'll see how this plays out. But I guess it's worth it to get Hicks in the lineup just because he's been hitting so well. But defensively, still very much a work in progress to this point. Yeah, we have for the rest of the stream.
Yeah.
But let us slide over to the Twins side right here. Byron Buxton having a really awesome season that's just getting better as it goes on. Knock on wood that he stays healthy, which he has for the most part here. You touched on it, Seth, that offense has just been not great as of late. Aside from Buxton, which hitters are you next most confident in a game like today at this point, just based on how they're doing recently?
Well, I would say, Carlos Correa was hitting about 210 for a long time. He's up in the 260 range, which isn't great, but obviously he's come a long ways from there. Brooks Lee, I think, is hit in like 28 out of 30 games or something. He's been pretty good. And I'm just a big Trevor Larnach guy. I think he's such a hitter mentally, and he thinks the approach and all that. It's not to say he's put up great numbers, but I really like his at bats and his approaches. Matt Wallner, one of the hardest hit exit velocities in baseball. Obviously Buxton topping that right now, but he's been right up there over 90 miles per hour as well. So there's not a ton to be real excited about. And if you look at Buxton, Larnach, Correa, Wallner, Lee, you've got guys that give you a chance. Ty France has really struggled to step with runners in scoring position. And even Royce Lewis, they rushed him back last time, and this time he got, an 0 for 8 in 3 games in his rehab. You'd like to see him get a little bit of time, but they're throwing him right back in there. So obviously they're better with Ryan Jeffers catching, but obviously you got to play the backup sometimes too.
You might not be aware of this, Seth, but on the Marlins side, there are quite a few fans that thought and hoped and still wanted Brooks Lee to be a Marlin. He was a guy that was very much available to them in the first round of the drafts like 3 years ago, and they went with Jacob Berry instead, and Berry still I think the lineup is just out today at AAA Jacksonville, and I think Berry is there pretending to play second base. I just want to check in with, now that we have Carver with us. How are we feeling about that almost 3 years later, Carver? The fact that Brooks Lee is settling in, it seems, as an everyday big leaguer, and somebody that would have been available to the Marlins, and they're kind of drafting. They're going to find themselves in a similar spot this year in the draft, right around the same part early in the first round. It's pretty important to get those picks right.
Yeah, it's just another example of, unfortunately, not a good first pick that the Marlins have made lately. Under the last regime that was here, that was in charge of that, and Kim Ang and everybody else, they really, I don't think, had, other than 2020, I guess, because Max Meyer and you got pitcher. It was only pitching, but on the positional side, they've really, really struggled. Not just because of what was going on in player development, but just because the guy wasn't the right pick at the time. And it really is true. Jacob Berry, what he did with the bat, it was encouraging. But even when he was drafted, he was a positionless player, and he's still a positionless player today. Somehow they put him at second base most of the time this year, as you just alluded to, not first base, not the outfield, not third base, which is where he started. So he has no business at third base. I don't think he has any business at second base. I think that, if the bat were something that were working for him, he could be a DH at the next level, but that really hasn't been a huge thing. He's had spurts a little bit this year with AAA, but it's just unfortunate when you see that, and that they could have had a chance at multiple guys, Lee included, who are contributing at the big league level. The Marlins just made the wrong call, unfortunately, under that old regime. So hopefully Pilieri, you guys talked to him the other day, hopefully his new model and analytics in place now, and putting more into the draft overall, I think will help them. Hopefully, last year that jury remains out on Morlando over Carson Bench. I don't think that was the right call. I still don't, but Morlando's been hurt more often than not, while Carson Bench is playing at the upper levels of the minors. So I don't know. My jury is still out on Pilieri, but it was his first year last year, so let's see what he does this year. That's my call on this. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt, and let's see how he does as he gets more used to this system and people that are around him. I'm intrigued to see what they do with a higher draft pick this year.
Hey, Ellie, can I ask a question? And I don't know who to, but if you look at that Marlins lineup tonight, how many of those guys were top 100 prospects, or even, maybe top 10 team prospects? They're names that I'm guessing most fans in Minnesota or really anywhere outside of like Southeast Florida might not know much about. I mean, I've heard of them because of fantasy baseball. That's why people know these names, but they weren't highly touted, were they?
No. I think Ramirez would be the highest touted prospect pedigree before
Yeah,
debuting.
and that was right before he debuted to like boost his stock only to that point.
Right. Yeah, and then Edwards and Sanji were both pretty high Marlins rated prospects, top 10 each of them for sure. And Liam Higgs was a Rule 5 guy this year. But no, you are absolutely correct. Norby was acquired in a trade. He was pretty highly touted with the Orioles. But yeah, you are correct that none of these guys were any of those blue chip Christian Yelich type prospects for Miami when they debuted, when they got here. They're just sort of a bunch of solid everyday guys that have really developed into being above average major leaguers for Miami. But yeah, it's a good point that you raised, Seth, because no, none of these guys. I think Ramirez is the highest touted prospect. He was the only guy that was borderline top 100 guy for sure.
It goes back to what I've said in the past and what I just said before about not being able to draft correctly for Miami and then not being able to get the most out of your players. It's not that Marlins didn't have good players in their system. It's that player development was failing to get the best out of them. That's why a lot of these names don't really seem like they were big names coming up, but they've turned into decent major league players. The ones that have been here for a little while, like Sanchez, and I guess Dane Myers is there as well. He's been here for a little while. The rest of these guys are newer, but yeah, it's not that the Marlins didn't have good players in the past. It's that player development struggle to get the best out of the players. On the pitching side, they didn't. They've been done really well on the pitching side. You can look at Yuri and Sandy and all those other guys that have been here for a bit since the last regime. So it's not that they didn't have good players here. It's that the Marlins player development system wasn't what it is today. Now it's much better.
Yeah, I think the Twins player development system, specifically pitching, has much improved over the last 6-7 years, just through technology, analytics, different programs. But if you look back at the Twins lineup, I mean, Royce Lewis was the number one prospect. Larnick and Wallner were, 50 to 100 guys. Buxton, Correa, number one guys. Brooks Lee was a top 50. And I'm not saying they're doing bad. Some of them doing well. Some of them have shown why there was those types of prospects. But to be able to get that play consistently has been difficult. I mean, we've seen for each one of them what they can do when things are going well. We saw that with Royce Lewis in his rookie year, and then again last year until the end of the season. But it hasn't been consistent. Matt Wallner had a good rookie year, struggled so much early last year. He was sent down within a month, and he's a 35, 40 home run potential guy. And someone pointed out earlier that the Brooks Lee numbers are a little bit misleading because even during his 18, 20 game hitting streak, whatever it ended at, I think he hit about 230 or something like that. So, and not a lot of power. So, I mean, he's definitely been better since that streak stopped. And now we hope it continues to add power and things like that. Sorry, I'm kind of rambling, but I just think it's interesting that they seem to be coming from two different places. So then to find them, as you said earlier, 2 games apart in the standings. And obviously they haven't played the same teams, but I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So Seth, we want to get you out of here on this. We have a prediction time segment before every single series, just picking how many games you think the Twins are going to win and who is your series MVP pick. It could come from either team. If you think the Marlins are going to win, you probably want to pick a Marlins player, but I'm going to put you in the middle here. And just share with us your predictions for this 3-game set in that regard.
So, because baseball is always so predictable, the Marlins coming in with 7 straight wins, the Twins getting embarrassed on national TV on Sunday. I'm going to pick that the Twins win 2 out of 3, just out of, maybe the Marlins feeling a little more pressure being at home in front of their own fans. But, and also I'm a Twins guy. So, of course, I'm going to say the Twins are going to win 2 out of 3. And I do expect games to be close, probably a couple of 1-run games, probably an extra inning game. And player, I'm going to go with Larnick. Larnick's going to, I have no idea what he's going to do, but there's my guess.
All right. So the rest of our predictions coming up at the end of the show. This was Seth Stows from Twins Daily, and we encourage anybody that is remotely interested in the Twins or Major League Baseball, check out twinsdaily.com. Their content the volume and quality of it kind of blows us out of the water for now. But I like the progress that we're making, and we're very happy to be part of the Diamond-centric family. Thanks a lot, Seth. And,
Well,
enjoy this.
you guys are doing great. I love what you're doing in video, podcasts, draft. What you guys did during the WBC was amazing. Spring training, minor leagues. I mean, you guys are doing it all, and anything we can do to try to help, let us know. And I don't know what that would even mean, but it's nice to offer to help. So, best wishes, guys. Enjoy the series.
Thanks a lot, Seth. We'll talk soon. We can transition to our press box report. Kevin Burrell has been waiting patiently to give us updates from Home Depot. First time the Marlins are back in Miami in 9 days or so. And vibes must be high, Kevin, off that undefeated road trip. Is that what you have witnessed so far pregame?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of media, more media than the usual. A lot of TV outlets asking Clayton about the 7-game win streak. And MLB Network did a thing with Clayton today as well. So, yeah, I would say so. It does feel like just business as usual for the guys. I don't think they're really focusing on that too much. Obviously, Minnesota's a pretty good team, having to face Joe Ryan today, who's been awesome this year for them. Probably one of the little bright spots on the Twins team that has disappointed a little bit this year. So, yeah, vibes, sure, we could say they're high. I think it's a lot more attention around the Marlins, especially that this is the only show in town right now when it comes to sports teams. So hopefully I'll be a little bit of a better crowd than what we've seen prior to the win streak.
Yeah, I was going to ask Kevin. Apparently, there were a lot of Panther draft picks at the ballpark today to go along with many of the media. How is the ballpark? I know it's 37 minutes before first pitch. Is it shaping up to be at least a half decent crowd, considering they're a favorite team and the only team in South Florida going on right now is on a 7-game heater?
Well, this is the one thing. We all know Miami sports fans, they show up late. So right now, it looks like Marlins and Rockies level. So hopefully by 6:40, 7 o'clock, it looks a little bit better.
Let me pull up the Panthers draft picks thing.
So these are like Panther draft picks and like development players. So a couple draft picks, a couple guys who are already with the team. Regardless, I don't know about that. So I just thought they were draft picks, but it's fine.
From my limited knowledge, I don't think the Panthers had a high draft pick this past year because of all the
fourth round pick.
Yeah,
Pretty sure they only drafted like 4 or 5 guys. Hockey is not like baseball where it's many rounds. It's actually only a few. There is a lottery, but when you have a good winning percentage, or as the Panthers did win the Stanley Cup, you have the lowest odds of getting a good pick. So I think the Marlins only drafted about 4 guys, most of whom probably have never seen an American baseball field. So this is actually, especially a Major League Baseball stadium. So this is actually pretty cool because, as you know about hockey, it's a very global game, and most of these guys come from different countries. I think all of their picks came from somewhere that is not the United States, which is not uncommon in hockey. So pretty cool to see these guys, probably a lot of them getting their first look at a Major League Baseball stadium. An empty one, but it's Miami, so hopefully that'll change in the future.
So one cool thing is that they had them, as you can see, they all had gloves. They actually went to just field, take shots, and yeah, it was interesting. But no Marlins players in the outfield today. It was all of these, I guess, prospects for the Panthers.
So instead of pitchers chatting, they put the Panthers draft prospects to work. Is that what happened?
Yeah, essentially.
Interesting.
Got some roster moves today. As it first reported by Kevin Burrell of Fish on First, Derek Hill back replacing Jack Winkler. That was a move that I think a lot of us saw coming. Winkler being underutilized, to say the least, off the bench, and Derek Hill. I don't know. Did Clayton speak all about Hill? Because he was, believe it or not, he was their primary center fielder at the start of the year. There was a point where he and Dane Myers were getting roughly the same amount of playing time. Sometimes Hill was getting even more. I think we can assume that he's going to slide more into a bench role behind Dane and Stowers and Jeezy. But was there anything from Clayton clarifying that?
So when we spoke to Clayton, the roster move wasn't made official yet, so he was not able to speak on the move. But I think it kind of speaks for itself when you see Roberto Hernandez taking reps in the infield at first base specifically. Clayton was wrong. He said he played it in AAA. He never played a single he didn't take a single rep at first base in AAA. He hadn't played it since high A in 2022. Right. So it's been a while, but it was Roberto Hernandez, possibly could play first base for the Marlins. And honestly, I think it's a better guy to have than like a Liam Hicks, who's a lot smaller and probably prefer him to catch games, although he is starting today at first. So, but I do think that kind of speaks for itself on what they're planning on doing. I don't expect to see Sanoja in the outfield too much more. I mean, you have so many of them. You already have Hill, who could play all three very well, all three spots in the outfield. So I think he'll be a bench player, kind of what it seems like. It seems like they finally found this lineup that really works for them, and it's very small tweaks. At least the top four in the lineup continues to be the same, and after that, it's really just depending on matchups. And I asked Clayton about that today. I was like, finally found some consistency with the lineup, and he's like, yeah, I think he's aware of what we say on social media, but he said that he said, it's kind of sad when we have the same lineup, because that way you guys don't have anything to talk about. And I was like, yeah, you're right. So
I mean, we'd rather not talk about that. I think it was me that said it, that like a few series ago, like when they kept shuffling this lineup, they had this different lineup every game for 70 games or whatever it was. Like, how, I don't want to go back into it. I think, Nate, you already said it. How can you expect a guy to get comfortable in a role when you're switching their roles every single day? Like, and now that they have consistency, look at that. They're winning baseball games. So I'm not a manager, but it makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. So it seems like that top four, top five in the lineup is pretty consistent, aside from when obviously there's a lefty. Sanchi will hit a little lower. Stowers probably not in the lineup, or obviously he's hitting a little lower as well. But aside from that, it's probably you're looking at what could be the Marlins lineup every day, honestly, at this rate, at least in top five.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you eliminate the human element of baseball and not let a hot guy remain in that comfortable spot in a lineup when the computer is spitting out a different lineup based on the opposing pitcher, the ballpark you're playing in, the weather conditions, every single analytical factor will change it. And that's what happens when you eliminate that, that heartbeat part of the game. So yeah, I agree with Carver. I think it's very easy to think that, hey, if you have Ramirez hitting fourth every single day, hitting cleanup, maybe getting a bat in the first inning every single day, he's going to be a little bit more comfortable. But what do I know?
And another part of the roster move, I don't think we'll go too far into it, but they did claim Nick Nastrini off the waivers from the White Sox, who a couple of years ago was a pretty sexy prospect name in the Dodgers system. I had to double check it, but he was part of the Lance Lynn, Joe Kelly trade. And I don't know if people care about this 2 years later, but the Marlins were a team that was had some interest in kicking the tires on Lance Lynn at that deadline in 2023 when they needed starting pitching. So if you want to go down that rabbit hole, but Nastrini made it to the big leagues last year with the White Sox, did not do well. He's been in AAA all year this year. Got demoted from the starter to bullpen, and he cannot throw strikes so far this year. And he's had issues with control throughout most of his career. But it's buying low on this guy.
The one thing I wanted to notice,
39 KBB. Geez, like that's. I think that's the only stat. I'll let Kevin go, but 48-39 KBB at AAA as a veteran. Yeah, I don't know.
The one thing I wanted to know, it's funny, you don't see these too often. I was talking to Scott Thornburg, who obviously does the play-by-play for them and travels with the team. They're in Charlotte, the AAA affiliate for the White Sox. So he just had to make a simple walk from one clubhouse to the other. He's already with the team, and he's with them. He's active, so they could use him at any time they want tonight. And you don't see those too often anymore. I think the last one was like Kendall Graveman when he got traded, and obviously, who was the other one? It was Christian Vasquez when he went to one clubhouse to the other right away. So there's a couple cases. I figured that was, I guess, a cool little note to mention that he's already with Jacksonville because Jacksonville came to him. So
that is a good nugget. Thank you, Kevin.
And another thing, Max Meyer is here. He's in crutches. He could barely walk. I'm surprised he's walking to begin with, but yeah, he already underwent that hip surgery, I think, on Friday. So he was here, and he seems fine. Obviously, can't play ping pong or anything like that, like he usually would. But yeah, he's here in the crutches.
I guess the only other thing to point out about that small pickup that the Marlins had, with Charlotte, he started 6 games, and I don't think with the depth that the Marlins have that he will be starting baseball games, even for Jacksonville. So maybe in more limited showings out of the bullpen, he could be a little bit better. But like you said, Eli, that control has just persistently been very, very bad. So I would expect limited contributions, but maybe a fresh arm they could bring up at some time.
He's not very good.
Yeah, that's not performed well. For what's worth, also his velo is down a little bit. He used to be a guy that sat in the mid 90s, and so far this year, I think he's maxing out at 96, but more so sitting 92 to 94 in a way that, especially if you're falling behind in counts, it just makes it more vulnerable to guys teeing off on you. So it's a project for sure right now. He goes on their 40-man roster. Just to give, before we get Kevin out of here, a quick update in terms of what the Marlins 40-man roster is looking like these days, with all those recent moves right there. It's, in terms of on the position player side, I mentioned this in official news that this is really the healthiest they've been on the position player side at any point this season. It's Conine, who of course is out for the year with his shoulder issue. But other than that, all the guys that they want to play in the big leagues right now are available and playing together in the big leagues right now. So for people that love to complain about bad injury luck, the Marlins right now are experiencing the other side of that. I think that's part of the reason why they're doing well, because a lot of other teams don't have quite as much luck as they do at this particular moment.
The other thing to note is, and you noted this too to me, Eli, is they hadn't made a roster move until like 2 days ago. Like they had been the same exact team for the whole entire month of June. Obviously, that helps when you're consistently having the same guys available to you rather than so much movement. So I think that's one thing to note. Obviously, this isn't a huge move by any means, and that's the first roster move they're making since a while. So I think that's a plus anytime you have the same guys out there, and probably leading to the same consistent lineup too, and bullpen usage and all that stuff. And could be part of why they've won 7 in a row and are having an awesome month, or had an awesome month of June.
We have Kevin's prediction time video loaded up, so we'll play that shortly. Other than that, just keep on following him, and we'll good job, Kevin. Talk to you soon.
First roster move since the selection of Josh Simpson on June 21st.
Wait, I wanted to clarify that it was the first roster move on the position player side in a whole month. Of course, they'd made quite a few on the pitching side between Simpson and just bring relievers up and down throughout June. But on the hitting side, they've had a lot of consistency right there. Just to look at the probable starters for this series, the first time Joe Ryan got mentioned, Edward Cabrera. Let's got to talk about Eddie when Carver's on here. Isaac can now relate to him. He's in his Eddie year of life. Or maybe you weren't referring it to that way, but now you can relate to him on a new level. He's in a fascinating spot. We are 30 days until the deadline. He's been performing really well and very consistently. He's now another opportunity against a talented team, but one that's slumping a lot. What are your thoughts, Isaac, in terms of the likelihood of him being dealt at the deadline as we get closer and he continues to kind of separate himself from a lot of the other starters that are on the market?
He's continuing to put himself in a position to be one of the more sought after starting pitchers on the market. I have mixed feelings. Peter Bendix has been very vocal about how much he really likes this pitcher. Again, this has been one of the longest tenured Marlins players on the roster. He is one of the longest tenured players on the roster. So, I don't know how much of a relationship Bendix has with him, but I know that he likes him. However, if another team is really desperate for not only this year, Edward Cabrera, but for the next 3 years, which that team would have club control over him, I think Miami should be fielding some pretty generous offers for this right-handed pitcher. Who would have thought that going into this season, especially after getting hurt in spring training? It's gonna be. I think you see him getting dealt, especially considering how Sandy had another setback a little bit in his start, in his latest start. I think Edward Cabrera is gonna be their crown jewel. So I would say it's more likely than not that Cabrera will be pitching for another team come deadline time.
Have another fancy junk outing coming up, but first, Carver, I know you wanted to add something on that.
Yeah, no, I think it's 2 questions. It's when is the Marlins window to compete? Is it the next 3 years? I think it is. Yeah, personally. And is this it still is a question for me, and yes, he's been very good, but it is still a question, as it will be for this pitcher for I think at least a couple more starts, if not 3 or 4 more for me personally. Is it for real? Of course, any pitcher isn't going to be perfect all the time. Is he prone to going out and getting blown up and then returning to form? Yeah, that could happen too. But I think the jury's still out, Eli. I do, and you may agree with me. I think that we still need to see this persist. Even though he's been very good, he's been able to reinvent himself in certain ways, especially with pitch selection, as we've talked about earlier. He's really been able to kind of just reinvent the wheel when it comes to how he uses his pitches, how he's using more of the strike zone, how he's consistently more in the strike zone instead of purposely going out of it. The selection, like I just said, there are multiple things that this guy's doing differently that are working. So the questions are, is it for real? And what's the Marlins window to compete? Within the next 3 years, yes. Is this for real? Still got to see. But, I mean, right now, of course Bendix is going to say he loves this pitcher because that could also be him talking him up to potential suitors. You're not going to say about a player that I hate that guy, you know what I mean? And then get a lesser return, or I don't really know about that guy and then get a lesser return. Of course you're going to talk him up. So as we talked about earlier as well, no one on this team is untouchable. Edward Cabrera is definitely not untouchable. It's just how he kind of fits into future plans. The Marlins do have several other pitchers that are going to come up and be very good in the minor leagues within those 3 years, I think. So there's questions here, but I think that the Marlins should field all offers for Edward. Will it still maybe be a little bit of a sell low in a lot of cases? I think it probably will be because of past history with injury and consistency. So I would venture to say that he will probably still be around after this deadline just because there's still not enough of a sample, unless he goes out and throws like a no-hitter or something. I still don't think there's enough of a sample of consistent play to warrant what the Marlins may want for a guy of this potential caliber. I will say he's still on the Marlins after the deadline, but we'll see.
Oh, that's fine. But I'm just saying he has not given him more than 3 earned runs since April. And that was in Los Angeles against one of the best offenses in baseball. He has not walked more than 3. He has not walked more than 3 all season, actually.
But he also hasn't been able to go past the fifth.
Right.
Right.
Right. So that brings you to the other point. I think other playoff hunting teams he would be more valuable to those teams, considering team starters don't really go deep in playoff games anyway. I think he's going to be extremely useful for a lot of playoff teams, considering how dominant this guy could be. Whether it's out of the pen,
it could be a sell high. He could revert again to the Edward of old, and then it could be a sell high, right? So it just depends how much the Marlins believe that this is for real. And I think it's a fair question to go both ways. I would say it's probably more if the Marlins believe this kind of play can persist, which he's showing that it may be able to. I think that they wait until if they're going to trade him, I think they wait until the offseason, but we'll see.
Yeah, it is. We don't even have time on the stream for me to go back and forth on all this. Of course, we have a full month now to go back and forth on this idea of trade value and how they compare with each other. It's hard for me to get past the lack of length that he provides. Now, some of it is, of course, team driven and management driven. We've been very vocal about a couple occasions where he was pulled earlier than he needed to be, we felt. So even though there's so little precedent, I try to find it. It's so hard to find other trade candidates in the past like Eddie that bring back a significant amount in return if they're averaging less than 5 innings per start. That has just not been what the starting pitcher position is. If you were that guy in the past, it meant that you were a fringy major league starter, a number 5 guy, if not worse than that. So it's so hard to find comparables in history that have been moved at the deadline and have brought back a decent amount in return. And because of his effectiveness, like that would be the motive to move him, is if you think you're getting a significant amount. At the same time, as Isaac brought it up, once you get to the playoffs, we've seen it's almost universal across the league that guys do not work deep into games, even if they're having a lot of success. In part, that's because those teams have awesome bullpens. In part, it's because, it's the same concerns that the Marlins have during the regular season, but even magnified in terms of not trusting those starters as much as they trust their relievers. At the same time, with Cabrera, the injury history it speaks for itself. Even this year, he missed some time due to injury. We'll see how long. The thing is, I don't know. Would I trust him to go the next 3 months without another IL stint? It would be totally unprecedented in his career. It seems possible, but there's just no precedent for it. And that's such a big complication in here. It feels like his trade value is higher than it has been in recent years when the Marlins have had conversations with other teams about dealing him, but never quite got something that they liked. I think I've made my opinion demonstrate pretty clearly that I would get out of the Edward Cabrera business at most opportunities if you get something substantial in return. But it is hard to gauge because the cop out here is that he's barely making any money. It's what is it, like $2 million, less than $2 million this year, 1.95 this year, and then arbitration eligible the next few. That will go up a little bit, but Sandy is 17.3 this year, 17.3 next year, an option for over 20 the year after that, where we think it's a reasonable value if he's healthy. But Eddie it's more surplus value with Cabrera because he's not even close to his free agent years yet. So that's part of it as well. Part of the value where it makes Cabrera a universal fit for any team that is looking for good pitching at this stage. So because of that more appeal, it's less risk, even if things go disastrously wrong. Because of that, I feel like his value would actually be a little bit higher. But you can go back and forth in terms of reasons why these guys might go, might not go. We're not going to talk too much about Sandy here because he's not pitching in this particular series. We'll catch up on that on the next stream. It's a fascinating spot that they're in with Eddie, and he's making it a tough decision by continuing to pitch well. So we're gonna have more coverage on the side about Eddie. I know our intern Sean McCormick is trying to make sense of all the changes he's made this year, because there have been actual real changes in his pitch usage and in where he's in his mechanics this year compared to previous years that are making a positive difference. And it's still, to me, it's fascinating that we could be reaching the end of the road because he's a homegrown guy. This is a Marlins team right now that has very few homegrown guys on their roster. Cabrera was signed and developed by them. He's been in this organization. Tomorrow, off the top of my head, tomorrow should be the 10th anniversary of Edward Cabrera signing as an international amateur free agent with his team back in 2015. So it would be, we have not known life without him for a very long time if this is the end of the road with him.
To be clear, I would sell high, but we can go on.
Yeah. We see the rest here. Always intrigued to see Yuri pitching again, even though his unabbreviated outing, his most recent one, the stuff looks good. The results haven't really been there to this point. It's an ERA a little north of 6 to this point, but continuing to be fascinated to see what he does every time out because he looks fully healthy. It's kind of the same conversation we've had with Sandy, where his stuff looks awesome and it looks like the rehab was successful, but now it's a different question in terms of actually translating that into major league performance. With that being said, I think we will head on over to prediction time as we so often do at the end of these streams.
This is prediction time.
I think we're going to win a lot of games, a lot more games than you think we're going to win this year.
Yeah, he was right.
Things are aging better and better for Bruce as the season goes along. There's a look at the previous series where there was a lot of people that were on the train of the Marlins winning, but only Kevin was bold enough to say that they were going to sweep the Diamondbacks. Stressful games to get to that sweep, but ultimately just looking at the results right here. So Kevin vaulted himself up the leaderboard several spots. He is now the leader among our staffers there, the underlined names. The rest are valued super subs, live stream guests as well. 15 minutes left if you are a super sub and want to get that prediction in on fishonfirst.com or in our private Discord channel on that server. How many games Marlins are going to win, who's going to be the series MVP. We'll go to Kevin's brief press box prediction video to hear what's on his mind.
Alrighty, series predictions, Marlins and Twins. Marlins looking to make it 8 in a row. Probably not tonight. I think the Marlins will take 2 out of 3. And the MVP, I'm going to stick with the hot-hitting Otto Lopez. Back to you, Eli.
Marlins 2 out of 3, Otto Lopez MVP from Kevin. Ooh, interesting take right there. Otto, of course, being the reigning MVP, but you guys know how this works. So let me just get the background set up once again and the music. And then we will start with Nate for a change. Let's get this music going. There we go.
Music. Should I wait for the music? There we go. Yeah, I believe it's just superstition at this point. I pitched against the Marlins every series of this win streak, so in order for them to keep winning, I'll do it again. I got Minnesota taking 2 out of 3, the cold team. Why not? And Eli touched on it earlier. Should have been Marlin. Marlins passed on him for Jacob Berry. Fortunately, had an amazing June. He's winning series MVP.
Well, I love it. Alex Carver, your prediction, sir.
So I think that the win streak will end. The Marlins will win the series. So I will say that the Marlins will win the series 2 out of 3. And why not? Let's give it to a guy that I still think is a little bit streaky at times, but he's been on a good streak right now, and he's the best player on this team offensively, in my opinion. It's Kyle Stowers MVP.
Isaac Azoot, go ahead.
Twins are bad on the road. The Marlins are pretty bad at home. I'm going to go with the Twins, unfortunately. Joe Ryan's pitched pretty well, but MVP is going to go to Byron Buxton.
I have the Marlins winning this series 2 out of 3. Wow. So the win streak doesn't last, but I do think that they continue to have overall success. They're just playing really well. My general philosophy throughout this year, not just with the Marlins, but across Major League Baseball, is don't count out hot streaks until they really fizzle out right here. And I mentioned I love the position player grouping that they now have active on the roster at this time. I think it might not be more talented. We touched on it earlier in the stream. It might not have better prospect pedigree than the Twins guys have, but they're playing a lot better right now. And a lot of credit goes to everybody involved with the team in terms of getting this offense to a level that I did not think they were going to get to in 2025. My series MVP is going to be, oh my goodness, I wrote it down before the stream. He's not even in the lineup tonight. I had Eric Wagman. I guess I'll stick with it. There's a chance he gets this at the first game. There's a high probability that he starts the remaining 2 games of the series. So why not? Eric Wagman to come through in some big moments as the Marlins take 2 out of 3. That's been FOF Live. Good audience for this one. Good guest earlier in the show. Thanks everybody for joining us and tuning in. And I think we're going to do pretty tricky scheduling here to avoid the 4th of July holiday. Next stream will probably be on Thursday night. It'll be like a combo Twins wrap-up Brewers preview. We have another guest coming on for that I'm pretty excited for. So looking forward to that. Hope you join us. I think it'll be 6 p.m. on Thursday, so less than 48 hours from now. I've been Eli Sussman, Nate Karsmer, Alex Carver, Isaac Azoot, Seth Stowe's earlier in the program, Kevin Burrell with our press box report. And yeah, we'll talk to you guys again soon. Go Fish.
Fish on First has partnered with About the Fans to launch a merchandise collection. Rep the FOF logo in more Marlins-inspired apparel. Find it all at aboutthefans.com. Enter coupon code FOF10 at checkout to get 10% off your order. FOF10 for a 10% discount.